You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. As always, I apologize for my Hebrew pronunciation. If I end up saying kochba, like I'm ordering a new energy drink, just laugh with me. Today's topic is the Bar Kochba Rebellion. This wasn't some minor protest or hashtag campaign. It was a full-blown revolt against the mighty Roman Empire in the 2nd century CE. Imagine a scrappy underdog sports team taking on the reigning world champions, except the stakes were freedom, survival, and identity. At its peak, the rebellion was seen as a heroic attempt to restore Jewish independence after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. For a brief moment, it looked like it might actually succeed. But the rebellion's outcome, its aftermath, and the way Jewish tradition remembers it make it one of the most dramatic and tragic chapters in Jewish history. So, let's explore the who, what, when, and why of Bar Kochba's uprising. The Bar Kochba Rebellion began around 132 CE, roughly 60 years after the Romans crushed the Great Revolt and destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem. By then, Judea was under tight Roman control, with Emperor Hadrian ruling from afar. Hadrian wasn't content with mere political control. He wanted cultural assimilation, too. He planned to rebuild Jerusalem as a Roman city called Aelia Capitolina, and even proposed putting a temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. To Jews, that felt like the ultimate insult. Add in restrictions on Torah study, circumcision, and religious practices, and tensions boiled over. Enter Shimon Bar Kochba, later known as Bar Kochba, son of the star, a charismatic leader who claimed messianic status and rallied Jews to fight back. He wasn't just a dreamer. He organized a disciplined military force, dug tunnels for guerrilla warfare, and minted coins proclaiming Jewish freedom. To many, it felt like Jewish destiny was being reclaimed. This wasn't just resistance, it was revolution with the hope of national restoration. Bar Kochba quickly became a folk hero. Rabbinic sources suggest Rabbi Akiva, one of Judaism's greatest sages, believed Bar Kochba might be the long-awaited Messiah, citing the verse, "A star shall come from Jacob in Numbers." Imagine the hype. One of the most respected rabbis of the age publicly supporting your movement. That endorsement inspired thousands of Jews to join, from farmers to scholars, all united in the dream of independence. Archaeological finds, like letters written by Bar Kochba himself, reveal he was a strict, sometimes ruthless leader, demanding discipline from his troops. He organized supply lines, established fortresses, and even enforced religious observance. This was no ragtag rebellion. It looked like a legitimate state in the making. For a time, they managed to control large parts of Judea, forcing Roman garrisons out. Bar Kochba even struck coins stamped with year 1 of the redemption of Israel. For ordinary Jews, this must have felt like hitting the reset button on Jewish sovereignty. The Romans, of course, weren't about to let a provincial rebellion humiliate their empire. At first, Rome underestimated Bar Kochba's forces, but soon they realized this was no small insurgency. It was a serious military threat. Emperor Hadrian brought in his top general, Julius Severus, withdrawing troops from as far away as Britain to crush the revolt. The fighting was brutal, with Romans adapting scorched earth tactics and systematic sieges. Bar Kochba's forces used guerrilla strategies, hiding in caves, building underground tunnels, and striking Roman camps at night. Archaeologists have uncovered entire cave systems, stocked with supplies where Jewish rebels hid during the conflict. For a while, it was a stalemate. But the Romans had endless manpower and resources, while the Jewish rebels were isolated. Slowly, the Romans tightened the noose, cutting off supplies and laying siege to fortified Jewish strongholds. The war turned into a test of endurance, and sadly, the imbalance of power began to show. The rebellion's turning point came at the fortress of Betar near Jerusalem. Betar became the final headquarters of Bar Kochba and his forces. In 135 CE, after a long and bloody siege, Roman troops breached the defenses. Ancient sources describe an appalling massacre, tens of thousands of Jews killed, including Bar Kochba himself. Rabbi Akiva's messianic hopes were shattered, and his students were executed during the persecutions that followed. Cassius Dio, a Roman historian, claimed that 580,000 Jews were killed in battle, not counting those who died of famine and disease. Judea was devastated. Many towns were destroyed, Agricultural land was ruined, and entire communities were wiped out. Survivors were sold into slavery or scattered across the empire. It was the nail in the coffin for large-scale Jewish political independence in Judea. The dream of a restored kingdom had collapsed, leaving trauma and despair in its wake. Yet, the memory of resistance remained alive in Jewish tradition. The aftermath of the rebellion was catastrophic for Jewish life in Judea. Hadrian punished the survivors harshly. He banned Jews from entering Jerusalem, except on Tisha B'Av, the annual fast day mourning the temple's destruction. He renamed the province Syria Palestina, erasing the name Judea from official records to sever the connection between Jews and their land. Jerusalem was rebuilt as Aelia Capitolina, a pagan Roman city with statues of Roman gods. Torah study was restricted, leading to secret underground academies. Rabbinic leaders like Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi eventually re-centered Jewish life around the oral Torah, compiling the Mishnah. Instead of focusing on political independence, Jewish identity shifted to a spiritual, portable Judaism that could survive in exile. In some ways, the rebellion's failure forced the birth of Rabbinic Judaism as we know it, an emphasis on law, study, and community rather than sovereignty. This painful transformation ensured Judaism's survival, even without a state or temple. Jewish tradition remembers the Bar Kochba Rebellion with mixed feelings. On one hand, Bar Kochba was hailed as a brave leader who stood up to Rome when few others dared. On the other, later rabbinic sources criticized his harshness and rejected the idea that he was truly the Messiah. Some even called him Bar Kochba, meaning son of lies, highlighting the tragic false hopes that led to disaster. The rebellion is commemorated indirectly on Tisha B'Av, when Jews mourn not only the temple's destruction, but also later catastrophes like Beitar's fall. The story also influenced Jewish messianic expectations, making rabbis more cautious about declaring any leader the Messiah too quickly. After Bar Kochba, enthusiasm for militant uprisings waned, and Jews turned to spiritual resilience instead. Still, the rebellion remains a powerful symbol of Jewish courage, reminding us that even against impossible odds, the yearning for freedom and sovereignty burned brightly. The Bar Kochba Rebellion also shaped Jewish identity for centuries. In exile, Jews often looked back on it as a cautionary tale about the risks of armed revolt against powerful empires. Yet in modern times, Zionist leaders reinterpreted Bar Kochba as a national hero. Early 20th century Jewish youth movements in Europe named sports clubs and scouting groups after him, celebrating his bravery rather than his defeat. In Israel, the story is taught in schools as part of the long arc of Jewish resistance and resilience. Archaeological discoveries, coins, letters, and fortresses have given Israelis a tangible link to that era, reinforcing the sense of an unbroken connection to the land. Even though the rebellion ended in tragedy, it symbolized the refusal to accept domination quietly. In that way, Bar Kochba became not just a historical figure, but a lasting inspiration for Jewish perseverance and pride, particularly in the context of modern statehood. From a psychological perspective, the Bar Kochba story resonates deeply. It embodies both the soaring hope of renewal and the crushing despair of defeat. For Jews living in exile, it explained why independence was lost and why rebuilding required patience, study, and prayer rather than swords. For modern readers, it raises questions. Was Bar Kochba reckless, leading his people to unnecessary destruction, or courageous, refusing to bow to oppression? The duality is what makes the story compelling. It's a reminder that Jewish history isn't simple. It's filled with triumphs, failures, and lessons in resilience. Whether viewed as a tragedy or a heroic stand, the rebellion shaped the path of Jewish survival for nearly 2 millennia. It forced Judaism to adapt and evolve, making it stronger in the long run. Like all turning points in history, it left scars, but also wisdom that continues to influence how Jews think about power, faith, and destiny. So, what's the takeaway from the Bar Kochba Rebellion? It's the story of a people who dared to dream of independence against impossible odds. It highlights both the dangers of misplaced messianic hopes and the enduring strength of Jewish resilience. The rebellion ultimately failed, but it ensured that Jewish identity would shift toward survival through learning, law, and community. Without that adaptation, Judaism might not have lasted through centuries of exile. Today, Bar Kochba stands as both a warning and an inspiration, a reminder of the costs of rebellion, but also of the unbreakable yearning for freedom. Whether you see him as a tragic hero or a cautionary tale, his story is part of the Jewish tapestry. Thanks for listening to the Everything Jewish podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. It helps more people discover these stories and join our journey through Jewish history.